What happens to us after we die? Do we cease to exist, or do we live on? This may be the biggest question that mankind has ever asked, as well as what this podcast is about. In this show, we will examine past life memories, speak with professional hypnotherapists, astral projection practitioners, psychics, and much more, all in an attempt to decipher this riddle. So welcome to the puzzle. Welcome to the regression session. Welcome back to the regression session. My name is Ian. This week we're going to be hearing from Marlee, and Marlee has some very interesting past life memories that have bled through into her dreams. I will leave a disclaimer here though that some of them are a little bit disturbing, so you've been warned, but I encourage you to listen to them anyway because they're really cool. Just a couple updates to the podcast. I have a Facebook and the Twitter where I post additional content sometimes. I also link to some other creators if you're looking for some similar content. So go ahead and check me out there. There's some links in the description as well. But on Facebook, I'm the Regression Session Podcast. And on Twitter, I'm at Regression Session. That's SESSN. If you have past life memories, or if you want to come onto the show to share your experience, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com. Here is the interview with Marlee. Hey Marlee, thanks for coming onto the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And for the audience, real quick, if you don't mind, just telling us a little bit about your background and kind of what led up to your experiences.
So my name is Marlee, and I'm a young woman. I live on the West Coast of the United States. And what kind of led me into this realm, I guess you could say, is I've always had a very active dream life ever since I was a child. And I've been keeping a dream journal for quite some time. I can't remember exactly how long I've been keeping it. It's been over 10 years now. And gradually, if you keep a dream journal, you start to notice certain patterns in your dreams and certain elements that really stick out to you, and certain things become generally able to start to differentiate between what is actually a dream and what is actually past life memory. And after that, everything just kind of happened. After I realized that, it was like the floodgates opened. So
when I was a kid, I used to have really vivid dreams, okay? There was this one dream. I actually used to keep a dream journal myself. And I stopped doing it because I kept having this recurring dream. And the dream was I was at school, and then all of a sudden an alligator would be there chasing me, and I would be naked, and I'd have to run away. And I stopped keeping my dream journal after that. That has nothing to do with what you're saying, but I just thought that I'd tell you that I stopped my dream journal because of that. Now, you mentioned before we started talking, I told you I was probably going to bring this up. Yes. Your belief in the sleep disorders being related to astral travel.
Yes.
Yes. Would you mind talking to me about that? Because I think that's really interesting.
So, I suffer from night terrors, and I didn't start having night terrors until I was an adult, which is really, really bizarre. If you look up night terrors under anything on Google, you'll see that it's mainly a phenomenon that happens in children. But mine came about when I was full grown. I was actually in my 20s, and I started thinking about because I've had night terror experiences where I'm actually like, I kind of, it's going to sound very weird, but I actually kind of leave my body. I'm able to like view my own body running or in like a state of terror from above myself. And I started thinking about that because like anytime when your brain is detached from your body, like when you say, for example, if you're a sleepwalker or if you have sleep apnea or any type of sleep disorder, your brain is technically shut off, but your body is still, your body's in control. And my father also suffers from sleep apnea as well. And it's just, and I've, after the specific night terrors that I had, where I was actually able, it was kind of like an out of body experience. I started wondering, is that really, am I actually traveling to somewhere else, but my body is just, am I traveling somewhere else in my sleep? And that's just kind of what led to me thinking about that, because it just felt too bizarre. I felt like an out of body experience almost. It's very strange.
So is this kind of like a general belief, or do you have like any like detailed? What's the best way to ask this? I know what I'm trying to ask, but like any nuances about this belief that lead you into believing it more, or is it just kind of like this is kind of what I think is happening? Tell me a little bit about that.
So there were a couple of instances with my night terrors that kind of led me to believe that maybe that led me to believe that, this ties into, astral travel. And one of those, it actually, now that you mention it, one of those comes into play because the same exact thing happened in a past life dream. The dream was so horrifying. I actually kind of detached from my dream body, and I was able to view myself almost like remote viewing, like viewing myself being, viewing myself and watching what was going on happening to me, and, being able to see it, but not being able to affect it. And then with my night terrors, I've also had experiences with my night terrors that kind of play into that. Like, for example, the night terror that I mentioned, where I was able to see myself above myself running and feeling very sorry for the girl who, myself, who is in that state. And then it also happened again. I had another night terror and very connected to the desert. And I took a trip to the desert once, and we were just outside of the gates of the desert, or where you go to enter. And that night we weren't going to go in. And that night I had a horrible night terror. And the only reason I didn't run was because there was a locked door in front of me. And I figure that's like my soul. It's like, hey, there's a place where you need to be, but you can't be there. So I feel like that kind of ties in. It's like, you're seeing something, but your body has to protect itself. Like your mind is like on autopilot, but your body's in control. It's very interesting. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, well, it was kind of like a general question, because I don't really know what I was trying to ask. Well, how to phrase it anyway. One thing that you might find interesting is I've talked to a couple people who specialize in astral projection, right? Especially there was one dude that was just like super skilled at doing it. And one common theme among these astral projection practitioners is that they actually, a lot of them believe that when you sleep, you are entering the astral plane in one way or another. So that's actually not necessarily an isolated belief that you have, that any sleep is kind of like astral travel, or you're entering the astral plane, believe it or not.
Are you familiar with the silver cord theory? Like like when you astral travel, your body's attached to your soul with a silver cord, and there's only a certain length you can travel.
Yeah, I've heard that before. And from the people I've talked to that can astral project, they, for the most part, really haven't seen it too much. They kind of, for the most part, from what I've heard from them, is that it's more of like a construct that your mind puts in place to kind of help yourself feel safer, I guess.
Right.
But that's kind of how they look at it. But a lot of people have seen that, and it's kind of common. Somebody said it was around 25% of people who astral project see it.
Yeah. I don't see the cord, but I do. I think I can feel it when I'm going too far, like in the desert. I feel like it feels like a tug, or it feels like just terror, like you're not supposed to be someplace, like you're at the boundary of a gate and you have to get back because there's a consequence. And that consequence is that terror that I guess I feel.
Yeah, people who astral project, a lot of them refer to that as alarm bells. like just alarm bells going off. So, you know, with this sleep journal and your dreams and your past life memories, how have you come to tell the difference between like what when you're just dreaming and when you're perhaps astral traveling, and then when you're remembering a past life memory? Because there's kind of three things that are happening there.
So the way that I'm able to differentiate between dreams and past life travel and past life travel or memories is the dreams that I have, they tend to not make any type of sense. Like there will be something like my dreams tend to progress in a way that they're very, very normal up until a certain point. And then something completely out of the ordinary happens. It's just like, this is so ridiculous. It has to be a dream. Or it'll just be like, you can check yourself, like you're in a lucid dream and what's happening, you check the time and the time is like 13:52 on your clock or something like that, which is impossible, obviously. And, so that type of thing. And also with dreams, there is so you can almost tell that there's something that it's a construct of your mind. It's, you can wave your hand and, there's nothing and the air will ripple, in my dream, for example. Past life dreams, I've noticed when I tend to have those, how can I explain this? Past life dreams, there's a truth to them. It's like I'm being put somewhere it's like I'm being put into a different time period or a different place in the dream. And I can't stop what's happening. I have to let it play out because usually if you lucid dream, you can change the outcome of your dreams. And I do lucid dreams, so I'm able to do that. But with past life dreams, I can't. I have to just let whatever is happening until it's ready to leave me, until it's ready to go through me. And also with past life dreams, there's always, when I wake up, there's always the feeling in my head, this is a truth. Like this is something that you need to write down, that you need to get out of yourself, because this is, you're seeing something that your soul remembers, that your soul knows. And there's no illusion in that, for me at least. When I dream a past life dream, I always know exactly what it is.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and what you said about like dreams being kind of nonsensical, yeah, I totally agree with that. I haven't really ever had any dreams myself that are like what you're talking about, so it's kind of a hard concept for me to grasp. Geez, I have a lot of questions in my mind, but I'm not sure which way I want to go, because I could take it a lot of different directions. If you don't mind, telling me a little bit, maybe a couple of your past life experiences, because that's the bread and butter of what this show was originally about anyway. I'd love to hear some.
Of course. I'll start off with probably the one that is the one that shocked me and like kind of got me into this idea the most, which is I had a past life. I believe I had a past life in Egypt, ancient Egypt in the New Kingdom. And the reason why I say this is because when I was a child, if you talk to anyone of my family has always told me that I've been obsessed with ancient Egypt my entire life. I can't explain it, but I remember when I have time being 3, carrying around in a book of Egyptian pharaohs. I have Egyptian papyrus. I have papyrus in my home. I have a cartouche necklace. I've had so many connections to Egypt, and I just didn't know how to explain that. And it just always has been with me since I was as long as I can remember. And I can't remember how old I was, but I remember one night I had this dream. And it was like I said, it was set during the New Kingdom of Egypt, and I was able to recognize the pottery and the jewelry on the dressing table and the paintings on the walls, and it was just insane. And it sounds interesting. So pretty much by the bone of the dream, I was a slave girl in Egypt at that time. And I know I was a slave because I had like specific markings that were common to slaves, like a specific piercing or something, or just not being treated very well. And the clothing I was wearing was very poor. And I don't know if you want a description. Do you mind if I go into like a description of it?
No, go for it.
Okay, cool.
Tell whatever you're comfortable telling.
Okay, perfect. And so I was a slave in Egypt, and I was a slave to a very wealthy couple that was very young, and the woman was very beautiful. And interesting thing about the woman herself is that she resembled a modern day person, like in her looks and appearance. She looked like a Hispanic woman nowadays. And, and her husband was there as well. And I was just this beautiful slave who was in their house, who just had to do whatever they wanted. And, and slaves, as you know, had no rights back then. They literally did not, no one cared about them. And I was a very beautiful slave. And the master and his wife were sadistic and very cruel. And I remember the master, he asked me to come in the dream. He asked me to come, or he didn't ask me. He kind of like just assaulted me sexually. Like he would catch me in rooms where I was and just assault me. And then I remember one day he finally just commanded me to come into his room. And he said I had to do, and I knew I had to do it because, what's my other option? The other option is to be sold or beaten. And so I did it, and I went in and he raped me. And after that, I remember having a feeling in my head. In that dream, I remember lying in my pallet on a little tiny pallet in the room. And I remember thinking, you need to enjoy your peace because you're not going to have your peace again for a very, very long time. And the next part of the dream was the mistress bringing me into her bedroom. And I guess she was very jealous of the fact that her husband was using me in the way that he was. And so she locked me into the room with her. And at first she began to talk, normally about normal things. And this is where I remember seeing all the pottery and all the jewelry and all of the amphorae and all of the trappings of their lives that showed me that they were well off. And she had me give her my hands. And so I gave her my hand. And she was talking to me, and she pulled out a box that had heated wood slivers, like thin, very sharp pieces of wood that she'd heated on some type of brazier or something like that. And she had my hands in hers. And what she did was she started to put these pieces of wood underneath. She drove them underneath my fingernails. I'm not sure if she did this with a mallet. After the first one, I don't really remember what she was using, but I could not get away. And she did this to my hands. She did this, and I believe she did this to my feet as well. And in the middle of all this going on, in the middle of the dream, I specifically remember leaving my body in the dream. And I remember floating like above myself and like kind of watching this slave girl being tortured, writhing in pain, bleeding on the floor. And I just remember thinking, my God, this I feel so bad for her. My God, this poor girl. And then I died of shock. And the only reason I know that I died of shock was because the next scene in the dream, I was facing Anubis, the Egyptian jackal-headed god of the dead. And Anubis was absolutely terrifying. I've never felt fear like that in a dream before. I remember begging and crying for my life in front of him at his feet. I remember he had the darkest skin I have ever seen in my entire life. It had a blue reflection to it. And he had a gold nose, gold jewelry. He looked exactly like the statues and exactly like the paintings that you see of him in the tombs. And he was cold, uncaring, and unfeeling. And I don't know what happened to my soul, but that was my life in Egypt.
That's horrible. Yeah, that's absolutely horrible. I feel so bad. And you had this dream when you were a child?
No, this dream happened. Oh my goodness. I believe it happened in 2015. I didn't have it when I was a child. I've only had one past life dream as a child, and I'll go into that later too, but it was very calm. And I also believe that there is such a thing as locked memories when you have past lives, because when I was a kid, I had normal dreams. I had one past life dream that I can remember. And then after I hit about like 25 or so, this was when all the past life dreams all the bad ones started coming in, like the ones where I would die or the ones where I would not fulfill a mission, I guess you could say. And so I think that locked memories are a thing, because I don't think that I would have been able to handle seeing that as a kid.
No, probably not. That's horrible. And believe it or not, I don't know if you probably know this, but the slivers, like the heated wooden slivers under the fingernails, that's been like a common form of torture throughout history. People have done that.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they actually, and for the audience, I'll see if I can find evidence of this and link it in the description, so look out for that. But yeah, that's actually like across different cultures, different countries. That's a pretty common thing. I don't quote me on this. They may have done that to torture POWs during World War II as well. So they've done that all over throughout history because it's horrible and it just like hurts. Geez, I don't even know what to say. I'm sorry that you had to experience that. And then one other thing as well, that you mentioned was like leaving your body in your dream. So the question I have about that was when you left in the dream, when you left your body, was your body still reacting and kind of alive and you were watching this play out?
So the best way that I can describe that is that it was like my dream self like my dream self that was me, who is the me in this incarnation and that I am now. It's like my dream self separated myself from the me that was the Egyptian girl. And so I was able to view myself as I am now, which is why I was saying this poor girl, this poor girl. But it was like almost like I couldn't believe that it was actually happening to me. So it was like I was aware that it was happening to me, but not the me that was alive, in this time period. And it's like I can still feel the pain. I can still sense the shock. I can still the feelings are all still there. It's just, I know that it's not happening to this current woman.
So one thing that and the reason I asked is because of this. When I've done a couple past life regressions with people who have been, killed or murdered or various other things, a lot of the time in their regression or in their past life memories, right before they die, they actually leave their bodies. Like if they know that they're going to die, they actually leave their body before that happens. And so they don't like experience necessarily like the pain and shock of dying. But they kind of watch from above until their body is actually completely dead. So that's why I asked that. Did you get a sense that that's what was happening, or just like your dream, or did it occur to you?
I knew that I was dying. I knew that I was dying, that I couldn't take it. But I don't, it's kind of interesting to ask that. How did I know that my body, I knew that. God, I don't know why this is so hard to answer. So it's, I don't think that I left my body so that I wouldn't have to deal with the shock or the pain. I honestly think that I just couldn't handle it. And then I just was like, I didn't want it to be happening. It's like, I don't remember watching myself die. I just remember going into the underworld, or to see Anubis, I should say. Because I don't know, Egyptians didn't really have an underworld.
And so, as far as like Anubis goes, what was that about, do you think? Like when you went to Anubis, do you think that it was like literally the girl's soul going to Anubis, or do you think it was something else?
Oh no, I feel like it was definitely her soul going to him and preparing to be judged and being afraid of the outcome of the judgment. Because they, as you know, I don't know if you know, but Egyptians, they believed in the trial of the feather and the heart. So I knew that I was going to have my heart weighed, and I didn't, and then I was afraid that my heart was going to outweigh the feather of truth. And I think that's why I was begging because I wanted to try again, because I know that I'd done something wrong. And it was just, yeah.
Okay. So then do you think that Anubis is like actually real then?
I don't know. I don't know if I would say that he is real. I do think that at some point he was. I don't know if he's still active or not as like, a judger of souls. Maybe he's active in another type of, another aspect. Maybe he's not exactly, maybe he's still Anubis, but he's Anubis in like if this makes sense, like as another type of God, like, I don't know, like the gods, I guess, like jump from like, when one culture that they have dies, they move on to another one, I don't know. But I do believe that he existed in some capacity. Otherwise, I don't know why I would have seen him other than that.
Here's an interesting thing to think about. Tell me what you think of this. So
Sure.
in near-death experiences, I don't know how much you've looked into some of these other phenomena, but in near-death experiences, and people who've done past life regressions, and people like mediums who've channeled deceased relatives and things like that, and even in astral projection practitioners, one thing that they all kind of say is that when you're like out of your body and you're in, let's just call it the afterlife. Some people call it spirit. I think it's kind of weird to call it that, but whatever. When you're out of your body and you're in this other existence, right? A common thing that is reported across, I'm going to just say practices and experiences, is that when you are there, what you think, it's just kind of like it shows up. So what's the best way to say this? So basically, if that's true, and it's been, like I said, this has been corroborated across disciplines in this, we'll call it metaphysical bubble. If this girl had died and she was expecting to see Anubis, and she was thinking of Anubis when she died or having that expectation, essentially Anubis would show up because that's what she was thinking about, and it would just show up because that's what she basically summoned through her thoughts. Because that's kind of a common thing across these disciplines. So what do you think about that? Like maybe that's what she was expecting to see, so that's what she saw.
That's really interesting if that's true. I didn't know that, that in NDEs that what you think about is usually is what occurs or what you see at the point of death. I did not know that, but that makes a lot of sense to me because, dying as a slave girl in Egypt, and the last thing you're thinking of is, oh my God, what is my heart going to weigh? That makes sense because, what came after death for the Egyptians, the trial. And so, knowing I was going to die and being afraid of that, I didn't know that. That blows my mind, actually. I do think that's definitely possible.
Yeah. And, there's people who've had near death experiences where they were like, yeah, there was nothing. Right. And a lot of these people, they're like, atheists and materialists, where they think that when you die, your consciousness ceases to exist. And so they're like, yeah, it was just, there was dark and there was nothingness. It was just dark. That's all it was. And that's what they'll see. My rebuttal to that is like, okay, but you were aware of darkness. If there was nothing, then you wouldn't have been aware that it was dark.
Right.
So that's kind of what, people have seen angels. Some people have seen Jesus. Some people have seen like the Buddha or Allah, or, I know that some people like over in the Hindu religion have seen the Hindu gods. It's just kind of all over the place. So it's definitely possible. And one other thing that you brought up, unless you would like to continue talking about this thing.
Oh no. What was the other thing you were going to bring up? I'm actually interested.
The locked memories.
Yes.
So this one time I was doing a past life regression for someone. Okay. Have you ever done a past life regression?
Never.
I would recommend doing one. It's really, really interesting. It can be really healing. But I was doing a past life regression for someone, and they just kept on running into this wall. Right. So my job as like the practitioner is to get you through that wall. Okay. But every time we got through the wall, it would just be a different wall. So I definitely understand, like, you're not the only one who's had locked memories as well, because I've personally experienced where people are like, yeah, I can't get through these walls, or my spirit guides aren't going to let me see anything. So I don't know if you've done any research into this stuff, but yeah, a lot of what you're saying is corroborated by different people.
Okay. That's really interesting. I just felt like there had to be a reason why I started getting all the really graphic dreams after I was a certain age. And I just figured, well, I just wasn't ready.
Yeah, and I don't know too much about the dream side of things. That's one thing that I haven't really looked into too much. Just because I have aphantasia, so I don't really remember my dreams too much, except for that
Hmm.
one with the alligator. That will always haunt me for the rest of my life. But yeah, that's really fascinating. I love hearing about these experiences. Would you mind telling me maybe a couple more?
Of course, of course. There was another dream that I had. It was actually I had it while I had a fever, and I went to sleep. I took a nap, and it was a dream. I was a young woman in Roman occupied Britain, and in this particular dream, I don't I tend to be like I don't this is going to sound terrible, but I tend to be wealthy and pretty in most of my past lives. I don't know why this happens, but it just I guess everybody gets different ones. But again, I was the daughter of a nobleman and um or a nobleman, and my mother and I were witches, I guess, because we would always use spell books, and we always had like these we always had different types of books that we would use, and different type of things that we would do. And I know we didn't hurt anyone, but my father, he was okay with it. He just didn't care as long as we didn't bother anyone or bother him. And this particular dream, um, the catalyst as to why I think it was locked was because I remember in the dream, I was told I had to marry, so I had to get married, and it just was going to happen whether I liked it or not. And my mother and we didn't agree with it, and so we just continued doing with our daily lives. And right before, and then my father came in one day in the dream, and he said one day right before I was supposed to get married, and my mother and I were sitting there, and he said, you both, I'm sick and tired of this. You need to get married. You need to stop with this witchcraft. If you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to make you listen to me. And I don't know if it was like the blunt end of a spear or it was like a tree branch. I think it was like a huge tree branch that he had or something with like a tearing implement on the end of it. And I remember he just attacked my bedroom and he attacked my mother. He beat her. He pretty much destroyed my bedroom and my chamber. And I remember just standing in the middle of it, I couldn't believe it. And my mother, he beat her so badly I didn't see her for the rest. She disappeared for the rest of the dream. And after that, I remember I was on horseback, and I was getting ready to leave. All of my things were there. And this older woman came up to me, and she handed me a bundle, and she said, "Look to the well of the oracle." And I woke up, and most people wouldn't. I know that sounds like a dream that wouldn't be locked, or that might not, be locked because it's not that bad. But I mean, getting beaten in a dream or seeing someone get beaten in a dream and then being taken away or being forced to go away and then being told to look for an oracle well that you don't know what it's for. Like, I have a feeling that I jumped into the well, that I sacrificed myself in the well after that dream, but I don't remember because I woke up. So that's another lock I had.
Yeah, these are all so interesting. I'm just like dying to hear because I know you when I reached out to you had a lot of them. So
I had a lot.
yeah, I would love to hear like just if you just want to keep going if you're comfortable. I'd love to just listen to them because those are so cool.
I am comfortable. I actually was looking in my dream journal because I have past life memories in there too. And there was another one that I remember that I didn't post about because this one is actually kind of like embarrassing or something. It's not really embarrassing. But another one, I was a member of a Native American tribe. And this is one of the few memories I have where I'm actually on the continent of my birth. And I remember I was a Native American woman, and I was adopted by the tribe because a lot of times tribes would adopt people. They would adopt people or captives that they bring in. And the family had a brother, and the brother and I were having a relationship, which in almost every single Native tribe is taboo. Incest is not something that they mess with. And the punishment for that in almost every society is either death or banishment. Mostly it's usually going to be death. And I remember I would always, I would go out to do things like I would go out to collect wood or collect wood or firewood or water. And my brother, my brother wasn't supposed to be with me, but he would always somehow be like right by me. And so, and I remember another part of the dream, my sister, my adopted sister, she walked in on us. And so she found us and she said she was going to tell our father. And my brother said, no, I'll take care of it. And we walked up upside of a mountain and we got to a place up at the top of it. And it was just like a rocky outcrop. And he said, I remember one thing that stands out in this dream is he kept asking me if I trusted him. And I would always say, yes, I trust you. I do trust you. And we got to the top of this rock and we got to the top of the rocky peak and he asked me, do you trust me one more time? I said, yes, I do. And he said, okay, well then I'm going to go over here. And he went over to this gap in the rocks and he laid down and he said, I need you to lay down next to me. And I said, okay. And I should have known what was coming. And the gap to the rocks that led nowhere. It was like literally just down a drop to a valley. And he pushed us down. And that was us paying for the burden of being in a incestuous relationship, even though I wasn't related to him. It was just, even if you're adopted, that was still considered to be too close. So
he grabbed you and then pulled you both off the cliff.
We were laying down. I lay down next to him, and then he like kind of pushed us so that we both went off together.
And how what were you feeling when you were like? Did you see the fall at all, or was that like the end when he just pushed?
He pushed, and I remember falling, and I remember thinking to myself, just why? Just this horrible feeling, horrible question, like, why am I dying for this?
That's so depressing.
Not to worry, I'll lighten the mood, because you did say you wanted some more, you'd asked me about, and this is kind of getting back to the locked memories thing, but I will mention one memory I had as a kid. And I've posted about this memory before. This is one of the few that I remember having as a child. And in this particular dream, I only had it one time, but I never, ever, ever, ever forgot it. It just stuck with me. And in this particular dream, I actually was able to identify the time period because there was a building in the dream. And it took me a long, long, long time to identify where it was. But in this particular dream, I used to live in this house. We had to get to it. You had to climb up a really steep hill. And so in the dream, I was my normal self, which is really rare for a past life dream. I'm almost never myself before going into the past life, but I was me as I am now as a child at that time. And I was walking up the hill to my house, and when I got to, and I remember it seemed really, really, really hard to get to the top, like harder than it should have been. And I remember when I got to the top of the hill, I was so shocked because it was like the world that I knew had fallen away in front of me. And there was another world that was opening up in front. It was so beautiful. It was this, I was standing on the top of a hill, and it was overlooking a valley or a plain. And on the other side of the plain, there was a hill again. And then on top of the hill, there was a walled city. And at the very top of the walled city, there was one particular building that was just gleaming, and it was just shining so brightly. And I remember just being so happy to see this building. And I remember in the dream, when I saw the building, I just threw up my hands. I started dancing, and I was just singing, and I was crying. And what was interesting was that I could feel other people pressing by me as I was dancing. I knew that there were other people, other like dream selves walking around in the past life, or other memories walking around. I could feel them brushing against my shoulder as I was dancing, and I could hear everybody singing. And I remember I was crying because I knew that I was coming home again. I just had this feeling that I'm home. I'm back where I need to be. I don't need to worry anymore. This is wonderful. And it was amazing. And I remember singing, and I remember it took me years to find out I was singing Hebrew. But that was one of the really pleasant ones that I had as a child, which was, Yeah.
So what was the building?
The building was, and please, I feel like I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. The building was what I now believe is the Temple of Jerusalem, the Holy Temple.
Is that like Solomon?
I believe it was
Like the Temple
Solomon's.
of Solomon? Yeah.
Yeah, I keep trying to figure out if it was Herod's temple or if it was Solomon's temple, but I don't think that there would have been so much rejoicing if it was Herod's temple. And so that's what leads me to believe that it was Solomon's.
Yeah, I kind of like when you were talking about that, I literally was just thinking like, oh, yeah, this sounds like Jerusalem.
It was. It was.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like you've been all over the place.
I have been all over the place, I feel like.
So what's your favorite one that you can recall or that you've written down?
Oh, let's see. My favorite one, I would have to say my favorite one is probably going to be when I was in Jerusalem. That was because it was just so because it was so pleasant. And then after I was an adult, it opened up the floodgates to like really getting into past lives, really delving and seeing and learning what they were about. And then there was another dream that I had that I didn't talk about because I'm not sure if it's a past life dream or not. I think it might be. I'm just mixing up details, but that one was interesting as well. But Jerusalem is definitely going to be, because that opened up the floodgates for me. And shockingly enough, the dream when I was an Egyptian slave girl is one of my favorites, just because I feel like still have so much to learn from that experience that I haven't even scratched the surface. And so for that, even though as horrible as it is, I feel like it's such a gift to be able to know and, to be able to look back and try to figure out what I did wrong and, try and help that soul or whoever is that soul inside of me just, find peace.
Have you ever heard of QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique?
I've heard of it. I have never done it before though.
Okay. So one of the concepts behind it is that sometimes when we die like a traumatic death, or we die and our soul is very attached to some place, it leaves behind fragments. So your soul will kind of like fragment, or like a little shard of your soul will chip off and kind of stay there. And when you do these quantum healings, sometimes you can like call those pieces back to you. It makes me wonder if you tried that, if that would have an impact on you at all.
I feel like it definitely would, because there's other lives that I have, or there's one other life that I have that I feel like is in serious torment. And I feel like if I did that, it would provide, if not me, but like who else is inside of me, who has been a part of me for years, it would provide that part of my soul with peace. So I would definitely that's something I'm definitely going to look into, because yeah.
Yeah,
that touched me.
Yeah, it's worth it, I think. Just because a lot of these hypnosis techniques and like past life regression and life between life regression and things like that, they're awesome. Regardless of whether or not they're quote unquote real, it's still a real experience. The experience is still going to be real to you. So yeah, I'd recommend doing that. And would you be willing to talk about the life that's kind of in torment?
Yes, I will. That one was the last one that I wrote about. And this is also one of the rare occasions. I think it's like one of the actually only lives I had as a male. And I know that people say that when we incarnate onto this earth, that we have to experience both sides of existence, as male and the female. And I don't think that I really enjoy being in a male body or in a male incarnation all that much. Because I don't remember a lot of this. The only one I actually remember being a man. But this dream, I have a feeling I'm pretty sure I was Native American, and I have a feeling that because of the timeline, I have a feeling that the soul that I was had trauma from the reservation school period. And I say that because this dream, I identified it as being the Vietnam War, just because of the landscape that I was in. And This particular dream, I was in the beginning, I was tossing down dream catchers to two men who were beneath me. I was like on top of like a box or like I don't know where I was, but I was above them, and I was throwing down dream catchers, and they kept asking me to find them for them. And I remember wanting so badly to find a dream catcher for myself. And I remember, and now I realize that I really wanted to have some part of who I was with me before I shipped out and before I left. And um, we got to Vietnam, obviously, and I was just terrified of life. I was terrified of everything. I didn't, I was just a scared person. And when I got to Vietnam, there was a supervisor, an older gentleman, who noticed that I was just, not having an easy time of it. And so he would bring me into his office, and to calm me down, he would give me drinks. And so I would just go in and talk to him, and we would drink, and that would be that. And by the time 6 months had passed, everything in Vietnam was starting to get really, really, really bad. And I was a full blown alcoholic at this point. And I remember one day my supervisor was shot. I remember in my notes I wrote that I thought that he had fallen into the window, but then I saw the blood exploding on the I saw the red, like the back of his head explode in blood. And I knew that he had been shot. And at that point, I started to panic because I was an alcoholic. Still hadn't solved whatever issues that I needed to solve. And I was completely and utterly alone in a foreign country. And that one was so bad, I woke up in a panic attack. So I think that soul I think it still has a really strong grip on the person I am now. So that's something that, that one scared me a little bit.
Yeah, man, like the war ones, those are the hardest ones for me, I think. Like people who were drafted and had to go to war, because I've had a couple experiences where I've regressed somebody and they remember being a soldier, notably a World War II soldier one time who left a pregnant wife. So so I definitely have experienced something similar, and that's horrible. So yeah, I would recommend trying out a past life regression or quantum healing or something, because it's awesome. One question that I always try to ask excuse me, is what do you think happens to us after we die?
Oh man, what do I think happens to us after we die? As a child, I believed that we would go to heaven, or that we would, go to an afterlife. It's kind of like, we get to see the people that we love, and we're there with them for however long that happens. That's just, the childish belief, basic Christianity, go to heaven, if you're good, go to hell if you're bad. But now that I'm older and that I've started, kind of getting into like the spiritual world, right now, I kind of believe it's my hope. I'll put it this way. I don't know where we go after we die, but my hope is that we get to go to be someplace with the people that we loved. And if the place that we loved, like, for example, like the place that you loved is on this earth, there was a time period on this earth, I feel like my hope is that, if I say, hey, I think the best time that I would like to go to is not, is a time when I can be surrounded by the people that I love and be in a timeline that to me is paradise, and just be happy there for, as long as I can. And I would like to think that that's what happens, that you get to be with the people that we love, and we get to exist in the timeline that we want. And it's just that's my hope. I don't know what happens, but if anything, that's what I can hope for. That's what keeps me going.
Have you ever heard of the concept of a soul group or a soul family?
I have.
Well, yeah, a lot of people see that within near-death experiences and past life regressions and things like that. So there is some evidence, even though it might be anecdotal, that you do get to see the people that you love again, which is comforting, I think. And do you have a message that you'd like to leave for people?
I think if I would like to say anything to people, I would say don't try to force your memories, or don't try to force anything out of you. It will come when it's ready. If there's information that you cannot get, it's probably not being shown to you for a reason. So I just say, be patient, and when it comes, you'll know. Just don't try and force things. Just let them happen as they will.
Well, that's a wonderful answer, Marlee. Thank you so much for coming onto my show and sharing your time with me.
Not a problem. My pleasure.
That's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Marlee for coming onto the show, and I'd also like to thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, head on over to Facebook and or Twitter. Follow me there. I have been posting some additional content. I plan on posting more, and also linking to some other creators that I think provide some really great content. And if you like the show, I'd appreciate you going into your podcast player, subscribing, leaving me a high review, stuff like that, so that I can get out there and really provide a platform for people to tell their stories and share their experiences. Because that's really what this podcast is about. And also, if you know somebody who you think would be interested in the show, or know somebody who you think would be interested in coming on to the show, share it around. I'd really appreciate it. Help get the word out there. And if you are interested in coming on to the show, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.